Hi everyone. I'm Mackenzie Skoczylas. I'm a member of Shoal Lake 40 and an architect here in Winnipeg. Uh, Born and raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba, even though my family has close ties back home in Shoal Lake, and then both Anishinaabe and Polish heritage from both sides of my family. So today, with the topic of maximizing our responsibility to the land, I really wanted to use this as sort of a case study of one of the current projects that is ongoing, that I've worked on for the last few years now, which is the Shoal Lake 40s Jordan's Principle building in community. So this project's very special to me, obviously, being able to connect back home and be able to provide designs with uh, family, some a bit more distant, and work together to really gain more ancestral knowledge and be able to apply that into the design itself. And it's also very important because this building is able to provide protection for the youth and community. And with any development being detrimental to the untouched lands that's being developed upon, I think that this project is a good way to demonstrate how Indigenous values can be incorporated into the early stages of design processes and throughout to make more sustainable spaces. So, for those who are unfamiliar with what Jordan's Principle is, it is named in memory of Jordan River Anderson of Norway House Cree Nation. That's who is pictured in the image here. And it is a child first and needs based principle that ensures that First Nations children have equitable access to government funded services. In order to ensure substantive equality, this can include services that are not normally available in reserve. So, services need to be culturally based and take into the full account of historical disadvantages linked to colonization that many First Nations children live with. McCoon's Jordan's Principle, which is specific to Shoal Lake 40, was developed in collaboration with representatives from Shoal Lake 40's health, education, social development, and family services sectors to ensure that all divisions were able to give input and fully provide a wraparound approach for service delivery to the youth of Shoal Lake 40. So, this specific Jordan's Principle, McCoon's Jordan's Principle, aims to provide a holistic approach to health, wellness, cultural, and social services. And underlying this full approach is the seven teachings, which include love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth. So these seven teachings also kind of influence our design principles throughout the project and are used within our holistic design approach. So to look at where the project's located, I'm sure many people are familiar with Shoal Lake 40 as that is where the city of Winnipeg gets our water from. But it's a Anishinaabe community in Treaty 3 located on the border of Ontario and Manitoba. So we can kind of see the border on the left bottom side of the screen. Um, and we've been in the news a lot throughout the last few years. We got a road in 2019, it was completed. And with the addition of Freedom Road, it allows direct access into the community when previously access was only through ice roads or through the barge coming from Shoal Lake 39. So it opened a lot of opportunity for development and growth within the space, and obviously wanting to address the community's needs with these new developments. So at the start of the project, it's really important to us to create more of a holistic approach to the design to really reflect the ideals of the peoples that the building's going to be for. And working with any community, it is my belief that the project should be a reflection of the community that the project's for. So we held various engagement sessions in which individuals from elders, women's, men's, and youth circles were able to openly share their stories, their experiences, and hopes for what this building could be. It's important during these stages that us coming in, even though I'm a part of this community, we're actively listening and making sure that all this information is gathered and that can inform the design in the later stages when we start getting into what it's going to look like, how is the synergy between the different programming going to relate. So, as this graphic is depicting, it's not exactly a linear process. It's extremely iterative, and we go back to the community to do multiple check ins through the different stages of the project to make sure that the translation of what their vision is really coming to life as intended. So each stage throughout design and into construction, we use the holistic design approach. And it's going back to the seven teachings, wanting to keep true to those, both engaging in these engagements and then translating the vision. So wanting to be honest and courageous when putting these ideas into our own drawings. Um, and then when we're running these, a common narrative that kept coming up again is how Indigenous identity can be incorporated within the spaces to better foster mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical well being. So, in the next few slides, I'll expand upon this process a bit further and how the building was able to reflect place, identity, and overall build community. So, the first one I wanted to talk about is connection to place. So, looking at the site plan here, this is really in the hub of social services that's being developed within the community. The unmarked building, kind of in the center of everything, is the current band office. But development's really booming around the area. Along with our project that's currently under construction, there is a preventions project that's also there to provide services to the youth as well, and proposed for a future daycare center kind of closer to the water. Um, and then our project is located, there's Freedom Road coming up from the bottom, and ours is kind of centered at the corner with the road coming into the band office area. So, a really great spot and provides full accessibility for those living in community to kind of gain access to the services provided. So, in creating a connection to the place, I think it's really important when working on these projects that we take a step back from the Western ways of thinking. We need to really understand the space and the relationship to the land, and we must begin to see it more as a teacher rather than just kind of where my super cool design is going to be placed on top of. It's more of a give and take, seeing what you're able to uh, use with the land instead of just, yeah, placing on top. So while I'm on site, I like to get an understanding of the existing topography, looking at sun paths, um, how the topography causes natural drainage paths, existing vegetations that are taking place, and a lot of the time looking at kind of what systems are taking place and kind of the biodiversity. So seeing how the plants and the animals are interacting and how we want to limit our disturbance to kind of the overall ecosystems in the space. So through engagements, we also get a further understanding of the histories of the place, which is really important why we hold these engagements and what practices surround the area. So, for example, with this location specifically, our our site was selected by chief and council in consultation with the elder circle. The site is significant to the community as it's historically a hiding place for when the government came into the community. Parents and grandparents would be taking the youth and kind of hiding them on a hill surrounded by a bit of bush cover. This way, keeping the children at home and wanting to protect them instead of having them taken away to residential schools or sanitariums or wherever um, these government agencies were wanting to take them at the time. So, yeah, the elders had chosen this location to really celebrate protection, and what these buildings will bring for the youth in the community. So, we did not want to touch that exact spot as it's considered sacred land, and we do not want to build upon that. So, adjacent is where the exact site for the building is taking place. I think it makes a lot of sense and fits the idea for protecting the children for future generations. Um, while sustainability is at the forefront of everyone in the design world's minds when new projects arise. Sustainable practices have always been implemented in Indigenous cultures from time immemorial. These values are a core piece of Indigenous architecture that I believe that many other designers and Indigenous designers hold as key values when working on projects. I believe that each of us are really stewards of the land and need to make informed choices during the design phase to approach our buildings to ensure that they're safe, healthy, and we can do this through both using new technologies and looking back to traditional techniques to ensure sustainable futures within the communities. More often than not, when conducting building assessments on existing buildings within communities, my own included, they were not designed to last. Um, a lot of them are seeing end of life a lot earlier than typical buildings. And something that's always resonated with me and that was really made a focus at the start of this project was the seven generations philosophy. So, this again holds the seven sacred teachings within, and it's the idea that making decisions that aren't necessarily influenced by the now, but instead are looking forward and seeing how the decision you make influences seven generations into the future, making sure that we're looking after our ancestors down the road and taking knowledge from those in have lived before us and using that to inform more uh more better decisions for yeah, the people of tomorrow. So, in this project, I guess some examples is looking at how this might be done, selecting more renewable resources, materials for the materials and finishes throughout, looking at items with higher durability so that they don't need replacement year after year, and creating spaces that benefit occupant health and well-being throughout. Because buildings that are taken care of and looked after, um, that the community is able to take more pride in, will ultimately have a longer lifespan. So going next into looking at how we can then enter identity into design. Um, I have two graphics that I'm kind of going to explain here. So going back to the engagements, we have collected all that information, and when we're reflecting on the stories and information shared during those, wanting to find a way to organize it. So the graphic on the right is looking at how to organize that information as a start. There's obviously so much more that each of these different routes can branch into, but it really shows the interconnectedness of all these various items and stories and topics that we're discussing, and looking at how, as designers, we can take from what we learned during those listening periods and then start weaving them into the space so that the building itself is able to tell the stories of the people, and they're able to see their own reflection within the spaces, as well as addressing their needs. So, example of how this was done in the Jordan's Principal building is if we look at, I guess, the node of culture, how it goes into different clan systems. This is something that we've talked about in community. And one individual actually went around and was able to document all the different clan systems that have taken place in Shoal Lake 40. So, along again with elder guidance, we were given that the building should be able to symbolize the turtle. Within clan systems, the turtle is responsible for teaching and healing. And then in our seven teachings, the turtle also represents the teaching of truth. And living the truth requires the use of all the other teachings as well. So really important that we find a way to kind of have the building emulate these deeper cultural references. So again, this is back to the basis of what Jordan's principle really is, creating a space for youth to come heal and learn the skills to remain healthy mentally and physically. So the diagram to the left is how we went through that iterative process with the community going back and forth and seeing how we can translate that into overall the form. And in different topics that are kind of throughout this diagram, those are translated deeper throughout the interior of the building as well. Oh, skip that one. So just gonna make sure I'm on the right slide. There we go. Now I wanted to highlight the design of this building and how identity is shown through its main spaces. So overall, the project is 7,900 square feet and has a detached garage located off the main parking lot for different kind of vehicles and outdoor equipment that serve for the program at the building. The overall program consists of assessment rooms, therapy rooms, respite, a teaching kitchen, staff spaces, a cultural room, and other support spaces throughout. Uh, the building's combustible construction with a steel canopy over top of the large outdoor programming area, kind of to the southeast there. And the final form of the building of the site, the idea is when you're coming into the community, up Freedom Road that the building starts to reveal itself more and more as you're coming through, which, is done through the roof slopes in this case. We took the topography line from this location, on Jordan's Hill or Jordan's Principal, where Children's Hill is, where they would take those children, and brought it down to the water, and the roof line actually mimics that kind of procession, and creates that connection back to the water and the meanings, the teachings related with water for life and healing that it brings. Wasn't targeting any specific sustainability targets. The design, by kind of intrinsically adding these Indigenous values, has resulted in exceeding the required R values. It utilizes energy efficient systems and uses various passive techniques for heating and cooling. It has been pretty conscious with the material selection for the materials within the building so that this can last over time and see many, many generations of youth pass through. On the east face of the building, we have a star blanket pattern, which faces a communal outdoor garden. Star blankets are often gifted to show gratitude and honor, but it also symbolizes protection. Extremely fitting with the programming and history of the site for this space. That we have the cladding kind of symbolize this protection over top of where the children are coming to heal. So while previously the Jordan's Principal service providers were working all over from home trying to get more secure Wi-Fi connections, having this building come into community and being able to provide them a space where they're able to conduct their work and be able to reach out to a larger group of children makes large impacts in both the community and the youth themselves. Having the building's occupants and visitors feel a connection to the building, um, again, will help them feel this connection to the space. So our building has four entrances, and these align with the cardinal directions, and wanting to kind of allow more opportunity to find your way outside and use the outdoor as a teacher itself. There's many land-based programming activities that take place through the Jordan's Principal programs, and wanting to emphasize that both indoor and outdoor spaces are equally important in the programming activities of McCoon's Jordan's Principal. So coming in the main entrance, it brings you into a open lobby and kitchen slash preparation space. With food being the center of gatherings, it welcomes one into the space and helps it feel more home-like for the youth and safe for them coming to this building for the first time. So food is very important as an aspect in Indigenous culture. It strengthens community ties by sharing a meal together, and many events and ceremonies are centered around it. With food being at the basis of every gathering, and in the plan, we wanted that to be reflected. So instead of tucking it away, we really wanted to emphasize this kitchen. It's kind of within the heart of this active zone. Um, Another way that we're able to integrate identity within the design of more of the office spaces um, was taking beadwork patterns shared with us through the bandolier bags. we're able to select certain florals, and with the community, come up with an idea to create acoustic clouds to really activate a space that wouldn't typically have a lot going on. Again, being able to see these when the patterns were lost before is uh, a nice node to kind of everyone's contribution into the project. Uh, these images here are showing the cultural room, and it differs structurally from the rest of the building. We wanted this to have warmth within the space, so here we have the glulam and wood decking above. The natural materials bringing a more home-like feeling to the space where cultural activities will be taught. We have a bunch of acoustic panels filling the room that match the exterior cladding, and the room itself is multi-purpose to allow for an array of programming to take place from different beading circles to language classes to making regalia. And then again, these spaces lead to two vestibules that will come out and connect with a outdoor programming area on the other side of the windows shown there. So the outdoor programming area is covered by a large canopy, and it's centered around a fire pit. This is a space provided for seating and shade, and an area where both elders and children can kind of activate the space. You're able to prepare food um, and have different land based teachings happen adjacent to this space. Again, we look back to the clans within Shoal Lake 40 for this space where we have the steel fire pit surrounding. So, in the style of the woodlands, we created art to have that reflected on the outside. And once the fire burns, it'll kind of look like this space is dancing with these different murals around. So, we all have the responsibility to the land and need to make a conscious effort to continue to design with these best practices and incorporate principles into our own approaches so that we can move forward for creating more healthy, livable buildings for the communities that we're engaging with. And then I just wanted to share some photos of the current status of the project. So you can see this is when that last big snow happened. The foundations are just coming into place. Uh, and what's really special about this project as well is Ernst Honch Construction entered into a joint venture with the Shoal Lake 40 contractors. The ability to use local labor wherever possible and local resources both help it strengthen the community economically and allow them to really build what's for them and take some pride in creating this amazing project that'll help the children. Um, I'll just take some time to note the consultants working on the project. So Wolfram Engineering, Scatliff Miller and Murray for the landscape architects, KGS Group for mechanical and electrical engineering, and JR Cousins Consulting for civil engineering. They worked extremely hard to see this project come to fruition, and uh, we're very excited to see how this project will affect future generations to come. So, Miigwech, thank you. I'm hoping that from that presentation, we're able to see how, in earlier design phases, using both the community's knowledge that they're sharing with you and Indigenous values can influence how the building is able to respond to the site and reflect the people that it is for.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Mackenzie. So questions for Mackenzie, you can drop them in the chat or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. There's also the opportunity to add some of the things that you found interesting there if you see the chat. So if you just want to stop sharing your screen there, Mackenzie, that'd be great.
Sure.
All right, so the first question is coming from Mike. What potential or actual, accidental, or predetermined shortcomings in making a structure indigenous have you seen? And what such shortcomings have you not seen but tried to avert?
Okay. Sounds like I have to read that question to really digest it.
Very real.
I think overall, um, some accidental or predetermined shortcomings is when people make assumptions without really getting the communities involved. Um, you can see something that maybe another community did that worked for them, and I've seen stuff kind of copy and pasted and proposed for other communities, but that doesn't necessarily align with their values or what their traditions are. Um, I think a way to kind of get away from that is doing these engagements and really understanding what the people want, and taking the time to make relationships. I think that might be the hardest part when you're first coming into a project. No one really wants to talk to you, unless you kind of have a rapport going already. So being able to gain trust and create an open environment where people are able to share their experiences and you're able to really get to the root of what they're saying. And a lot of the time, through stories and experiences, you'll be able to understand the deeper connections that are trying to be made, and see what it's coming from. And again, if we go back to that holistic design approach, in the flower graphic, there's these like dots kind of surrounding each of the different phases. Those again are looking at community approval, and going back and bringing it to them saying, "Hey, so this is what I heard. This is how it's been digested and put into a drawing and how it's being translated in my mind. Is this what you see? Are we on the same page? And if not, then you go back to the beginning, try again, because you don't ultimately want to kind of make assumptions and just here you go. Because that's when buildings aren't used. That's when kind of relationships are going the wrong way. And I think it's not good designs at that point.
That's absolutely. I love it when people actually circle back after a consultation. My goodness. Okay, so great project coming from Chris. You talked about factors to make the building durable and lasting. What special efforts did you explore to use to make it easy to care for?
So specifically with this one, we um wanted to have some sort of node to the warmth and look of cedar. In this case, they did not want to look into staining the building year after year. So we went to a steel cladding for where it looks like wood, which I know there's varying opinions on kind of products that aren't true to what they're trying to be. But in this case, it worked for the community as it'll be lower maintenance for they have a couple that they're looking into having a couple employees for maintenance for the building. Um, so over time, it'll be less on them. Um, For the interior, we are looking at so for Jordan's principle, a lot of these childrens have different needs that need to be met. Some have mobility equipment, and overall, some kids will be kids and knock things around. So throughout the whole areas, we wanted to make sure that we're beefing up our walls, having impact resistant drywall throughout, just to make sure that we're not constantly having to get the maintenance people to patch our walls, putting protection throughout the areas where mobility aids might be bumped around in the hallways, as well as handrails throughout so that people are able to navigate throughout efficiently. Just wanted to thank you again for having me today. And yeah,